I mean, Sherman, have you or has Transnet gone through a similar kind of process? What was your experience in adaptation?
Yeah, so I think it's similar in some ways and different in others. So we didn't start from a science-based approach. It was more around vulnerability assessment from a risk lens point of view, and really around business continuity for the business and trying to understand climate change, adaptation from that point of view initially. So we did initial risk and vulnerability assessments, kind of desktop exercises to understand, well, what were the different parts of the business, what weather variables would be most relevant for the different parts of the business at a very generic level. Once we had done that exercise, we started to do different things in different parts of the business. So in the port environments, when the port was hit by an extreme weather event in I think it was late 2017. There was an extreme weather event, and that kind of catalyzed some action around understanding the weather event, which gave more impetus to the business to start to understand how does climate change link with weather, and we got the opportunity to do some deep work in understanding the port environment. So we started to look at the data, the weather data. So we've got weather stations also, just like Eskom. So we took weather data for the port environments. We've got some in-house data scientists that took this weather data and started to crunch these numbers and started to see, well, what weather variable is really important for the ports. And it turned out that the weather variable that gave us the most information was wave height variance and wind speed for the port environments, right? So it would make sense that in retrospect, those would be the most important variables. But the wind speed translated into, so what's the threshold level at which you can operate equipment in the port environment, right? Number of turns of a crane in a port under different weather conditions, and at what speed do you stop using that equipment? And what's come out is that those threshold levels that were historically relevant are no longer relevant. So we've got to make adjustments on how we operate on a daily basis.
So explain that a bit more. So the cranes are built worse, the wind speeds are too high?
The wind speeds are too high. And
more often than they used to be.
It's a intensity issue, right? It's an intensity of wind speed and a frequency. So what the data showed us is that for 3 months of the year, the likelihood of high wind speed was starting to approach kind of like the tail end of a normal distribution, which is no more on the tail. It's sort of moving towards the center. And that data came out in 2017. It's verified in 2018, and we'll see in 2019 whether it's still real. We think it is. So that's on the wind speed side. Similar issue on the wave heights, right? So you're not experiencing sea level rise as such in the short term, but you're experiencing higher waves at certain times of the year. And long waves, which is a different type of wave that moves perpendicular to the entrance of a port, which then impacts your ability to bring in a ship into the port, right? So those are just two kind of real examples in the port environments. We detracted, because you asked me, yeah.
Process.
Yeah, okay. So if I step back again then. So similar things observed in the rail environment. In rail, it turned out one of the most important weather variables is lightning strikes, right? And lightning strikes then impact on your overhead track equipment along the rail corridors. So what happens is if your signaling system is hit by lightning, then in terms of business continuity, you can't run a a freight train through that part of the section of the rail because there's no signaling equipment available. And that's become one of the key kind of problem areas that was the data throughout, which we would not have identified otherwise, right? The specific variable is lightning strikes and overhead track equipment for the rail, and there are others. So temperature obviously plays a role on expansion, contraction of the rail lines, and all that comes out in the data also.